let's imagine a different reality for a moment. This is a hypothetical, alternate history kind of scenario. What if Mount Vesuvius erupted today with the same fury it had back in the year 79 AD? What would that look like in our modern world? We all know that back then, the eruption buried entire Roman cities, like Pompeii and Herculaneum, under ash and volcanic debris. Thousands of people were killed in just a matter of hours. It's one of the most famous natural disasters in history. But now let's fast forward almost 2,000 years and picture what might happen if that exact same event took place right now. Mount Vesuvius is not some ancient relic. It's a very real and active volcano located in southern Italy, just a few miles from the city of Naples. And Naples is not a small town. It's home to more than 3 million people across its metro area. So if Vesuvius were to erupt the way it did in ancient times, it wouldn't be hitting remote ruins or scattered farms. It would be crashing right into one of the most densely populated regions in Europe. The danger isn't just theoretical either. Scientists have studied the volcano for years, and they know that it has erupted multiple times since 79 AD. In fact, the last eruption happened in the year 1944 during World War II. It wasn't as big as the one in ancient Rome, but it still caused plenty of damage. And ever since then, scientists have been keeping a very close eye on it. The Italian National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology runs a constant monitoring system around Vesuvius. They watch the ground for shifts, listen for tremors, and measure gas levels around the crater. It's one of the most closely watched volcanoes in the world. Still, all the monitoring in the world can't always predict exactly when or how a volcano will blow. If Vesuvius started showing serious signs of activity, it might give a few days or even weeks of warning. But in a worst-case scenario, there might only be hours to act. That means millions of people would have to evacuate very quickly, and that's where the real challenge begins. A lot of towns and cities are built right around the base of the volcano. These are places with homes, schools, hospitals, businesses, everyday life. Some of the people living there are in what's known as the red zone, the area expected to be hit hardest by things like pyroclastic flows, ashfall, and flying debris. In a full-force eruption like the one from the year 79 AD, those pyroclastic flows could race down the mountain at speeds of over 100 miles per hour, destroying everything in their path. Naples would be in the danger zone for heavy ashfall, which can collapse roofs, contaminate water supplies, and make it hard to breathe. If the wind were blowing in just the wrong direction, thick clouds of volcanic ash could smother entire neighborhoods in a matter of hours. Imagine walking outside and seeing the sky turn black in the middle of the day. That's what ancient Roman writings described back then, and the same thing could happen again. Even modern buildings and roads might not stand a chance. Airports would shut down, trains would stop running, and roads could become impossible to drive on because of all the ash and debris. People would panic, traffic would pile up, and emergency services would be overwhelmed trying to manage the chaos. And this is all just the beginning, and that's the reality we're stepping into with this hypothetical. In the next part, we'll take a deeper look at what the first 24 hours would look like during the eruption, how the eruption begins, how fast the situation unravels, and what happens to the people caught in the middle of it. The eruption begins without warning in the early morning hours. First, there's a deep rumble under the earth, followed by a sudden explosion that blasts a massive column of ash and gas into the sky. Within minutes, the top of Mount Vesuvius is hidden behind a cloud that stretches tens of thousands of feet high. Lightning crackles through the ash as the pressure from beneath the volcano is released in violent bursts. People across Naples and the surrounding towns wake up in confusion and fear. Windows rattle, dogs bark, and the ground trembles underfoot. In the first hour, the sky grows darker. The sun disappears behind the thick cloud, and a strange stillness falls over the city. Ash begins falling like snow, slowly at first, then thicker and heavier. Cars are soon covered, streets look like they've been blanketed in gray powder, and it becomes difficult to breathe without some kind of protection. The ash stings the eyes and burns the throat. Local news stations broadcast nonstop, telling people to stay inside if they haven't already evacuated. But it's already too late for many. Closer to the volcano, in towns like San Sebastiano al Vesuvio and Torre del Greco, everything happens fast. The ground splits open in places. Huge pieces of rock are launched from the crater like cannonballs, crashing into buildings and vehicles. Then come the pyroclastic surges, superheated clouds of gas, ash, and rock moving so fast there's no time to escape. These surges race down the slopes of the volcano, engulfing homes, roads, and anything standing in their path. Temperatures inside these clouds reach over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt metal. Anyone caught in them wouldn't survive. Hospitals begin to fill up quickly with people suffering from burns, breathing problems, and injuries from falling debris. But many doctors and nurses are stranded themselves, unable to reach work through the chaos. Cell service is patchy, power flickers in and out, emergency responders are working without rest, but the roads are jammed with traffic, and visibility is near zero in some areas due to the ash. Helicopters are grounded, boats try to help evacuate people along the coastline, but the sea is becoming rough as the eruption shakes the entire region. The Italian government activates its highest level emergency protocols. Military vehicles begin arriving to help transport people. Shelters in nearby cities like Salerno and Caserta are quickly filled, and more need to be opened in places farther north. Meanwhile, the ash cloud keeps rising. Air travel is shut down across southern Italy, and planes are rerouted away from large sections of Europe. The volcanic ash contains tiny particles of glass and rock that can destroy airplane engines, so every flight near the area is grounded. By the end of the first day, it's estimated that tens of thousands of homes have been destroyed or seriously damaged. Entire towns are silent under layers of ash and debris. The death toll is unknown, but feared to be in the thousands. Rescue workers continue searching through the rubble, calling out for survivors, and trying to locate people who might be trapped. In other parts of Italy and even across Europe, people are glued to their screens, watching live footage of the eruption. It's not just a local crisis anymore, it's a national emergency with international consequences. Scientists warn that if the eruption continues at this intensity, the effects could stretch far beyond Italy. The ash could enter the upper atmosphere, changing weather patterns and even cooling and global temperatures in the weeks ahead. As the first night falls, people are still trying to get out. The roads are lined with abandoned cars. Some people are walking, covering their faces with scarves and jackets, hoping to make it somewhere safe before the next blast comes. For many, the worst is still to come. In the next part, we'll take a closer look at the fallout during the first month after the eruption, what life looks like for survivors, what challenges Italy faces in rebuilding, and how the rest of the world is affected. In the weeks after the eruption, life across southern Italy changes completely. Naples, once a bustling coastal city full of life and movement, is now buried under layers of ash and broken stone. The air still smells like sulfur, and cleanup efforts are slow and dangerous. Thousands of people who escaped the initial disaster are now displaced, living in emergency shelters or with relatives in other parts of the country. Many homes are gone. Schools, churches, and businesses are shut down. Roads are either damaged or blocked with debris, making transportation difficult. Public health becomes a growing concern. With so much ash still in the air, people are told to wear protective masks at all times. Respiratory issues rise sharply. Hospitals outside the affected zone are overrun with patients from the south. Clean water is hard to come by in some areas because the ash has contaminated reservoirs. Crops in Campania, known for growing tomatoes, olives, and grapes, are destroyed. Farms that weren't buried are coated in fine volcanic dust, and livestock have either fled or perished. The Italian government declares a national disaster and calls for international aid. Help arrives from France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Rescue teams, medical supplies, and cleanup equipment pour in. Engineers begin assessing the long-term damage to infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, and historic buildings. Some towns closer to the volcano are declared total losses. No one will return to live there anytime soon. Beyond Italy, the effects are spreading. The massive ash cloud has been slowly drifting across Europe. Satellite images show it stretching as far as parts of Scandinavia and Western Russia. Airports across the continent are facing delays and cancellations. Shipping routes in the Mediterranean are disrupted, forcing cargo vessels to reroute, raising the cost of goods. In cities like Rome, Milan, and Paris, daily life has changed as people adjust to hazy skies and ash warnings. Climate experts begin to raise alarms. With so much ash and sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, there is concern about temporary cooling. Scientists compare it to what happened after the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in the early 1990s, when global temperatures dropped slightly for over a year. It's still too early to know how big the impact will be this time, but computer models suggest a cooler winter ahead for much of Europe and parts of Asia. In southern Italy, tensions are rising. Not everyone is happy with the speed of the government's response. Some communities feel abandoned, especially smaller towns on the edges of the disaster zone. Protests start popping up in nearby cities where displaced families are demanding more support, faster aid, and clearer answers about when they can go home or if they ever can. Emotional fatigue is setting in. Many people are grieving not just lost loved ones, but lost homes, lost routines, and lost futures. Cultural institutions begin their own recovery efforts. Museums and archaeological sites across Italy launch campaigns to save historic artifacts that may have been damaged by falling ash or tremors. Experts from around the world arrive to help preserve churches, ancient statues, and artwork threatened by the disaster. Meanwhile, volcanologists are still studying Mount Vesuvius closely. Small tremors continue to shake the region. Though the main eruption has passed, the volcano is not quiet yet. There are still gas emissions, minor explosions, and a high risk of landslides as loose ash and rock shift in the rain. Scientists warn that secondary eruptions or mud flows called lahars could still hit nearby valleys and low-lying towns. The next challenge is rebuilding. But with ash piled in the streets, destroyed water systems, and power grids still down in some areas, recovery is slow and uncertain. As we move into the fourth and final part, we'll look at what happens a full year later, what has changed, what hasn't, and how this one disaster altered the lives of millions and left its mark far beyond Italy. One full year has passed since Mount Vesuvius erupted with the same force it did back in the year 79. The smoke has cleared, the skies have returned to a soft blue, and the constant tremors have quieted. But in southern Italy, the scars left behind are everywhere. What used to be thriving communities in the shadow of the volcano are now quiet zones of rubble, fenced off and still unsafe. The once vibrant slopes of the volcano are now dry, cracked, and coated in dark ash, with only small patches of new green trying to break through. In the city of Naples, the rebuilding process is slow and uneven. Wealthier districts have made progress. Roads have reopened and businesses are starting to come back to life. But poorer neighborhoods, especially those closer to the old eruption zone, still struggle. Whole blocks remain unlivable. Some residents have decided never to return, choosing instead to rebuild their lives in Rome or abroad. Others stay, holding on to hope that help will eventually reach them. Tourism, which was once a major source of income for the region, has not yet recovered. The famous ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum, already delicate, suffered additional damage from falling ash and tremors during the eruption. Some historic buildings and roads leading to them are still closed. Tourists are hesitant, and local guides and shop owners have been out of work for many months. Hotels that once thrived during summer seasons are either shuttered or operating at half capacity. The environmental impact has started to shift. Some forests that were burned or buried are beginning to grow back. Rivers that had been clogged with ash and debris have cleared out with the help of teams of engineers and natural rainfall. However, the land around the volcano remains unstable. Farmers returning to check on their land are finding that their soil is still too dry or too acidic for planting. Vineyards that once produced prized regional wines may take years to recover, if they do at all. Across Europe, the lasting effects of the ash cloud are still felt. While the skies cleared months ago, the unusual cooling that followed the eruption had an effect on agriculture. Crops in parts of France, Germany, and Eastern Europe produced lower yields during the last harvest season. Some regions experienced an unusually cold winter, especially in northern areas. The global climate impact wasn't as severe as feared, but scientists are still studying long-term changes. Economically, Italy is under pressure. Billions of euros have already been spent on emergency aid, rebuilding, and infrastructure. International support helped during the early weeks, but now the burden lies mostly on Italy's shoulders. Insurance claims, government loans, and public projects are draining funds quickly. Some smaller towns have been quietly written off, marked as uninhabitable for the foreseeable future, their residents permanently relocated. On a human level, the emotional toll remains heavy. Mental health services have seen a sharp increase in demand. People who survived the eruption now face anxiety, grief, and a sense of loss that can't easily be fixed. Children who lived through the evacuation are still adjusting to life in temporary schools. Entire families have been split up by relocation. Communities that once held tight bonds are now scattered. At the same time, some powerful lessons have been learned. Emergency systems are being redesigned across the country, not just in Naples. Early warning systems, communication networks, and evacuation routes have all been updated using the latest technology. The eruption served as a wake-up call not just for Italy, but for every country with active volcanoes. Volcanologists, city planners, and government leaders around the world are reviewing their plans and preparing for the worst. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the modern day changed everything. It reminded the world that nature, no matter how carefully we monitor it, still holds incredible power. It destroyed lives, homes, and history, but it also sparked a global conversation about readiness, resilience, and the importance of respecting the natural forces around us. This disaster may be behind us, but the lessons it left will shape the future for years to come.